My name is Tristan Barnum, and I am Director of Product Management. I do our business communication systems for Digium, so Switchvox and sort of Switchvox plus the phones. So if you have questions about Switchvox and the phones, I can definitely answer you. Switchvox and asterisk, you might stump me, maybe a little, but you can try. I am one of the original founders of Switchvox, so if you have a Switchvox question, I should be able to help you. I did our front end for Switchvox originally before we were acquired by Digium. Just in case you didn't know, we were a separate company and got acquired, goodness, 5 years ago, and have been working on Switchvox ever since in various capacities, so I can answer whatever you need. But today what we're going to be talking about are the components of the API. So what is the Extend API, and what are we doing with it? Why are we doing anything with it at all? Why is it important to you? And then I'm going to go into all the different components of the Extend API. There's a lot of different pieces to it, and we're going to go through each one, including the core methods, call creation, the IVR Web Integration, which is a really easy way to get started with Extend, and PBX event notifications, and another really easy, quick way to get going to see what kind of apps you can build are the custom switchboard panels. And then when I'm done going through how all that stuff fits together, David's actually going to show you what it looks like to build an application. So I'm going to leave him about 15 minutes to build a banking application. So you guys will all see how easy it is to really crank out apps that can be translated out into the real world and things that can make you money if you're reselling a Switchvox solution out to your customers. So let's talk about the fundamentals and the goals that are inside, sort of encompassing all the pieces of Extend. So Switchvox Extend is an API, and for any of you that are really new to this, API stands for Application Programming Interface. So it's a way for you to write apps and interface with software, using software. So you'll hear us call it Extend, the Switchvox API, just all kinds of various things. We're always talking about Extend until suddenly this week we're not. We also have a very exciting session going on tomorrow where we're going to be talking about our new JavaScript API for the Digium phones. And that has, it's separate from Switchvox because you can use this to interface directly with the phones if you're using asterisk, or if you're using Switchvox, doesn't matter. You can write apps to those phones. So before, when you heard us talk about the API, we only meant one thing, but now there's two. So just be aware of that. There's a talk tomorrow that Sean Ruffle is giving all about introducing that new phone API. So I definitely encourage you all to attend that as well if this stuff interests you. And together, Extend and the phone API are just killer, really cool stuff. So Extend gives you a way to get information from Switchvox and allows Switchvox to talk back to your application. So your apps is a way, your apps can ask Switchvox a question, get a response. Your little web application can then make decisions based on Switchvox's results, and then tell Switchvox to do something about it. So we're going to go through all the various sort of manifestations of that. So another really important question that we have to get out of the way, what is Switchvox Developer Central? And that's the online location for our developers and resellers and systems integrators where they're going to go and learn and share with each other and explore different ways to integrate Switchvox with their various applications and situations out there. So components of that include a wiki that has all of the documentation for the API. So absolutely, first step in app development is to go to Switchvox Developer Central, get on that wiki, and learn about all the different pieces that you're going to need, all the different parameters that these calls take. There's also tools up there that are going to help you develop and test your applications. So in particular, there's libraries up there, and there's also a little web tool where you can basically test the responses that you're getting from your requests through a little web window. So you can paste in your request and hear what the Switchvox has to say on the way back to test and make sure that your stuff is working. Even if you don't have a Switchvox of your own, you can still write applications against this test suite. Or if you're having problems on your own server and you're wanting to see if that's something that has to do with your own configuration, or you're just malforming a request, you can check up there. So there's also step-by-step tutorials that include example code to build applications that are up there. So you're going to be able to log on and download code, download assets that you might need, and watch us step-by-step build applications. So when we're done today, David will be able to put up his application and do a little write-up about how to build this little banking application. And you'll be able to go and download that. And then most importantly, I think, is the two-way communication between Digium and all of you guys who are developing applications for your customers and for yourselves. And that really happens through the forums. Because we don't want to sort of bottle you up in places where it's hard to get information from the past. You can search through those and see if somebody's asked a similar question. Maybe you're developing a CRM integration for ACT, and it turns out that 3 people have already done this, and these are the problems they encountered, and here's the solutions. You can go on there and look through that. But we're also really active there. So if you're developing an application and you run into a roadblock and you really need some call that the API doesn't have, or you can't find a way around this, you can post to the forums, and we'll jump right on that and respond to you with either workarounds or maybe ask you for more details about what you might need. And that's how we get new stuff into the API that we might not have put in there otherwise. So definitely use those forums. Now, the way that you get here is developers.digium.com/switchvox. That's going to get a little facelift coming up pretty soon, but the URL will always redirect there and always stay the same. So developers.digium.com/switchvox is your first step in making an app. So what's the point of all this? We have no idea what you want to build. Like, Switchvox does so much already, and we can't predict what the next big thing is going to be. We don't know what kind of wacky customers you guys are going to find that need something totally outrageous. And traditionally, your phone system has just been this bottled up thing. Asterisk changed all of that because you could really get in there and customize and tailor and build exactly what your customers needed. Switchvox takes that to a level that is more accessible, I think, for the majority of people. And one of the things that it does is it simplifies development so that you're not actually changing out what's fundamentally happening. You're just acting and reacting in new ways we haven't thought about with the software. So we really want you able to do whatever you need to do. So don't feel constrained by the API. It's not our goal to block you out of things. Be sure to let us know what you're trying to build and tell us your success stories, because the point of all this is to extend what Switchvox does. It changes what you can offer to your customers, and is really a huge differentiator in the market. So this is really a communication mechanism for external application that lets you bring your phone system sort of in harmony with the rest of the systems in your business. You've got a CRM package, you've got a shopping cart, you've got all these different things, and the phone system is always sat off in the corner, and what you needed was a way to interface with that, and that's what the API does for you. So if you need to build Windows applications, if you need access into a customer database and your phone system to be aware of that information, this is stuff you can do with the API. Any kind of web services. So everybody has an API now. You got Flickr, you got Google Maps, you've got everything Google does practically, all very API-ified and very straightforward and well documented. And you combine that on the other side with the Switchvox API, and you've got end-to-end solutions to solve just about any problem a customer can throw at you. So this is interesting. You can almost think of the Switchvox GUI as an external application at this point. The Switchvox engine is running, and the web front end is consuming information and passing information back and forth from the API and back into the database and things like that. So we really are using it to build stuff outside of Switchvox too. So we've got the Fire Dialer plugin, and what this does, if you're familiar with it and you use Firefox, you can download this little plugin. It's going to find any phone number on a web page and let you click to call those little phone numbers, and that just uses one of our call creation API methods. It's a very straightforward thing to write, and that's one of the example code chunks that we wrote for Developer Central, and we went, well, heck, we might as well release this thing. So you can download the little plugin as well. We also have Switchvox Mobile out there, where you can download an iOS app or an Android app that will give you access to changing your call rules, company directory, making phone calls. All of those things are things you can do with the API, and that's what we use to build it. So that's an application anyone could have written. So we hear a lot of times requests for features and requests for new products for Digium to come out with, and 99% of the time these days, my answer is, you can build that right now, and you don't have to wait for us. And that's where we count on you guys in the community to really explore and be creative with what you can build with the API. So I mentioned the entirety of the Switchvox web interface is just about API-ified at this point. Every new thing that we touch gets API-ified. That's sort of what we say around the office. But that's our first step, is to write the API so that we can build the front end to that stuff. And we always release that back out to you guys. So anything Switchvox can do, it is our goal for you guys to be able to programmatically access that same functionality. And as we go forward, that will always be our goal. We want you to ultimately be able to build a new Switchvox interface if you wanted to. But more likely are going to do things like consolidate a whole bunch of Switchvoxes and be able to have a centralized management system for, let's say, the 30 Switchvoxes that you manage for your clients. You can build a front end that sits in front of all those front ends and talks to the Switchvox. So we want you to be able to be creative and use this any way that you need to. So the API is there so that you can solve problems for your customers. You're going to need to integrate with systems that we haven't seen before, really specialized pieces of software, maybe custom in-house pieces of software. And that's going to be value that you can bring to your customer and say, I see that you're a taxi cab business, and I see that you're looking at this big Avaya system that's going to cost you a fortune, and this Mitel system over here, and you're looking at Link, and you know what? I can make you the taxi cab service PBX. And I can do this for you for cheap. I can do this for you quickly. And I can do this where no one else can. They cannot customize and integrate to the level that we can with the simplicity that we can. You're not going to need a whole bunch of crazy Cisco certifications and Microsoft certifications and all this other nonsense to learn some weird programming language or anything else. Once you see what these calls look like and what the XML is structured like, you're going to be like, well, yeah, I can do this. I can do this in 5 minutes. And that's really why we get into showing off the process that it takes to build an application. So you're going to be able to really customize the entire solution for your businesses that you encounter out there. I already mentioned you can build a consolidation tool potentially for resellers where you're going to be able to maybe do things for yourself, not just for your end customers. You can make your own life simpler. You can query system health. You can look and see how phones are doing. And we really want to be able to give you those tools so that you can make your own lives easier and build applications that help you, not just your customers. Vertical application development is huge. So I talked about the taxi cab example, but there's lots and lots of different examples of verticals that are absolutely ripe for application development. Insurance agencies, medical, education. I mean, you can pick an industry, or maybe you have already chosen an industry, and really be the phone system solution for that industry, maybe in your region, and say, this is the guy. And word of mouth will spread so quickly between doctors or insurance agents that you can reuse these applications. And with a minimum of fine-tuning and tweaking, you can really, really make some excellent money building out these applications for customers in vertical markets. We also want you to be able to create your own features. So we get, hang on 2 seconds. Going a million miles an hour. We want you to be able to create your own features. We get requests for things like night mode. We could put night mode in there, but I don't know how you want night mode to work, and I don't know how you want night mode to work, and everyone seems to want this to work a different way. And you can build night mode with the API really, really quickly. Auto dialers. So people try and use Switchvox in call centers every once in a while, or a business that has a call center sort of piece to it. And it makes sense in those situations to be able to extend a little bit what Switchvox does to help you close that gap and to build what you need. And an auto dialer is a perfectly valid thing to be able to build with Extend, and you can absolutely do that today. IVR confirmation systems. So people really want that in Switchvox. But if you can imagine trying to please all people with an IVR confirmation system, we would never be successful. We need you guys to be able to customize those things and to build them yourselves. So I like to think of Switchvox as sort of an outlet for your creativity. So next time you're thinking about a feature request, or wouldn't it be cool if a phone system could do this? Or you're in front of a customer. This is one of my favorite things to do in our booth, actually. People come to me all day and they say, well, let me tell you about my business. And here's what I'm looking for. And I listen and I think about their problems, what they face day to day, and what will streamline what they do every day. Like, what do you find yourself spending time on and getting hung up on? And it's a very creative process to think about how I can use the Legos I'm given in Extend and put together a solution that's really going to add some serious value for these people. So I really encourage you to not get hung up on, I keep throwing out examples because it's hard to wrap your head around, hey, I want you to be able to build anything. It's hard to think about. So I do throw out these examples, but you're in no way limited to those things. I want you thinking big, and I want you thinking about really making a difference for your customers day to day. So let's talk about sort of the nitty-gritty here. What is Extend made of? These are the components of Extend, and some of them are sort of related. We've got the core methods of the API. We've got the API for call creation, which is technically sort of part of core methods, but it existed before, and so it sort of fits in a little differently. And then we've got IVR Web Integration, PBX event notifications, and custom switchboard panels. So we're going to start with the core methods. And this is an API that lets your application do things that you would normally be able to do in the admin or the user section of Switchvox. So anything that you can do in admin, anything that you can do in user, it is our goal to have that all in the API. I can tell you that not 100% of the things that you can do are in there, and that's just because they're legacy things. So anytime we have to go back and touch a feature, let's say we make a change to call rules, we're going to APIify pretty much all the call rules. So there is some work going on to retroactively bring things up to speed and make them available in the API. But if you need something right away and it's not on our radar, please write to us and let us know through the forums or even through features@switchvox.com and let us know what you're trying to build. Give us as much detail as you can, and even if you have some idea of what that method might be called, let us know what it is you're looking for, and we'll do our best to get it in there, maybe even if we didn't plan to touch that stuff. So things like fetching your call logs, things like extension creation, anything that you're doing through that interface, you should be able to do programmatically as well. So every time you see a page load in Switchvox, you can think about, hey, that was search.log. And know what was used to build those pages. So this is really just talking about more of the same stuff. You know, update call rules is a call. It's switchvox.users.callrules.update. And that's what we use ourselves to build the call rules page. So all throughout the system, we are using the API. So it behooves us to make it easy to use. So, and that's why we do it. So we're using it everywhere. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of the thing. This is some of the information that you can get using the API. And you can tell what all of these things do just by looking at them, but they are all very well documented also. I'm super familiar with them, so I can look at all of them and know that switchvox.getExtensions.getInfo is going to return XML to me for a particular extension and give me all the metadata surrounding that stuff. So I don't expect you to read all that. I'm just letting you know, hey, doesn't this kind of look familiar? It looks like most of the other APIs that are out there in the world, and they are going to respond back with XML. So you can get this idea that we have quite a few, but it turns out we have quite a few more. And this isn't even half of them. So there are a lot of Legos to play with. And I encourage you to go and look at the documentation and read about what's available, look at the main categories, and really dig into what we have there for you. So we did the core methods. Again, I can't go through all of them. I can hardly touch on them, but you can look at them and say, yeah, I get that. So let's talk about Extend API for call creation. This is what lets you originate phone calls using Switchvox. So it's part of core methods, and you'll see it there. It's switchvox.call and switchvox.users.call. Switchvox.call just creates a call in the system between two extensions or two external numbers, and switchvox.users.call makes a call in the system between the user's extension. So you're doing this like as a user with all of the subsequent permissions and everything else to another extension or an external number. So just slight subtle difference in there, and you can check in the documentation and see the different parameters those things take. But I have a little sample XML request of something that you might pass to a Switchvox here. So this is using switchvox.call, and you can see that the parameters are listed out. They're called parameters, so none of this looks very cryptic when you read it. It looks like English, which we like. Dial first, you see a phone number there. Dial second, you see an extension there. So what this is going to do when you send this XML to the Switchvox is it's going to dial this phone number here, and then it'll connect it to extension 800, which, if you're familiar with Switchvox, which I hope you all are, you know that extension 800 can be anything. It could be an IVR, it could be a call queue, it could be somebody's virtual extension and ring out to their cell phone. You can do anything with this call creation and hook two sides together. So if you want to do a confirmation system for a doctor's office, you might want to call your patients and hook them to an IVR that says press 1 to confirm, and then you're going to be able to pass that back, and we'll go through that in the URL manager. So the third parameter here is dial as account ID, and what that's just doing is saying, pretend when you make this call that your account ID is this, and so because of that, you're able to dial internationally. These are the SIP providers that you should be using to place the call. So it inherits all of those different permissions and benefits that that account has to it. So you don't have to pass that, but it's available. So some of the things we've used to build this, and now that you are going to look at FireDialer and you're going to say, I know how this works. This is switchvox.call, and I see what they're passing is the phone number and the dial first and the dial second, and that was easy. And it's true. FireDialer took all of 20 minutes to write and works great. Switchvox Mobile, certainly a little more complicated because we're doing native application development, but uses the same stuff when you dial using the dialer inside Switchvox Mobile, or you click to call somebody in the directory. So there's so many real-world opportunities here. There's doctor's office appointment confirmation system, which I talked about, an order confirmation system for a web store. One of the things we have available as sample code is a let us call you box that you would slap on your website so that customers coming can type in your phone number, or type in their phone number, and switchvox.call will fire off and hook them right to whatever extension you tell them to. So we have a full-on blob of assets for you too, even graphics, I think, are up there. So you can slap one of those on your web page in 5 minutes. Subscription reminders for Switchvox. So if you haven't paid your subscriptions, we could send out automated calls for you, or to you. Also, you might use it as part of an escalation system. If you're not getting anywhere with pages, it might escalate to phone calls if you're on call for a knock or something like that. And my favorite one is schedule a call to get out of a meeting. So certainly you can have your calendar system talk to Switchvox and say, hey, get her out of this one. I should have programmed my phone to ring right then. That would have been rad. OK. Extend API for call creation we covered, so let's talk about IVR Web Integration. So this is sort of how we get to the other half of some of the things that I've been talking about. Interactive voice response is what IVR stands for, and a lot of people think, oh, you support voice, I can talk to it. It just means it's going to respond back to you with a voice. You can program an IVR basically to greet and interact with callers, and most of the time they're interacting by pushing buttons, which is good, because if you've ever been at the side of a road trying to talk to one of those IVRs, it's a nightmare. So the IVR can provide information to the caller, collect information from the caller, and then send the caller to the right extension, for example, based on the input that they've given. And Switchvox IVR Web Integration is the component that lets you create actions inside the IVR that actually bust out of the IVR. They pass values outside of Switchvox for your own applications to evaluate, act on, calculate against, all of that good stuff. So within your own web-based application, you can do stuff with call values, and I'll get into some specifics. So I think they're here. So you can interact with the web app and do things like authenticating callers against a backend database. So that's one of the things that we're going to show off in our banking application here in a minute is maybe I need to guard something with a password, like an account balance, or you want to put a PIN code in front of something, and it's going to authenticate you. And if you haven't dialed in from the right phone number and you haven't put in your PIN properly, you can't get to your account balance. That's something that you can do. You can also route people based on that stuff too. So if you're trying to authenticate them into a priority queue, for example, that's something that you can do. You can also store information and send information outside the system of anything that a user has put in. So if that's collecting digits, that's one thing. If it's a sound file, you can also record that inside our IVR editor and then send it out using the API. You can read back customer information. So of course, it's going to look stuff up in a database. You might want a way for it to read that stuff back. These can be pre-recorded things if there's a subset of things that you can predict. For example, it's never going to be cloudy with a chance of frogs, so you don't need to have text-to-speech for an application that's going to read you the weather when you put in the zip code. But you can build a database of sounds and actually play them from a URL instead of having them local on the system. You can also do really nice things for customer service. This is one of my favorite little applications, is to get people to the right person. Who did they last speak to? When this phone number last called into the system, what happened? Or when this phone number called into the system, your app checked them in the database and said, you know who this person's personal banker is? Okay, it's Leslie. Okay, this is her extension. Let's route the call to 222. We also talked about confirmation of appointments over the phone. So you can use switchvox.call to generate the phone call out to the patient. Those two things get connected. And the piece in Switchvox that you connected them to is extension 800, which was an IVR that then takes in digits like 1 when they say, yes, I would like to confirm. And then Switchvox can pass that 1 right back out to your application where it says, they said they're coming. So there's a ton of IVR actions inside Switchvox, and these are the ones that you would use to contact web services. So send call values to a URL. The call values are the things attached to the call, so like the DID that you called in on, your caller ID, things that Switchvox knows about you innately, not something that you had to put into the system. So all those call values are available to send to your URL. Upload, and that's also how you're going to send the stuff that they put in too, but just to let you know you have access to everything Switchvox knows about the call you can pass. Upload a recorded sound. We'll let you upload a sound to any web-based application. And then play sound from a URL. So it'll download it from the URL and then play it to the caller. I did that one. So we covered IVR Web Integration. Let's talk about PBX notifications of events. So Switchvox can let your app know when something is happening, what event was it that happened, and any information surrounding the event that might be relevant. So metadata just about the event. And who cares? Like, what is it supposed to do with that information? Totally up to you. So your app can say, oh man, somebody checked the voicemail box in 222. And your app can go, doesn't matter, 222 doesn't matter. Then Switchvox can say, oh my gosh, somebody left a voicemail in extension 233. And it goes, oh no, that's the priority mailbox. It means everything's on fire. Ah! Like, do a bunch of stuff. So your application can evaluate what's going on in the system based on different event triggers. And this is what's going to let you really build apps that Switchvox doesn't have, that are really hard for us to think up. And these are the things that can be that you can use to trigger your application to do things. So on an incoming call, you can say, hey, app, do something. When a call gets routed to an extension, your app might go, that extension doesn't matter, that one doesn't matter, that one, oh no, they got into the crazy queue. We must be filling up, I need to go page a bunch of people. Whenever a new voicemail is left, It's going to be able to tell you what voicemail box it was left in, how long the message was, all kinds of stuff. So you can send out notifications of priority messages, things like that. When a voicemail gets checked, when an agent logs in, when an agent logs out. I think we added pause in there. And then on-call hang-up as well. It's in there. I thought it went in there. Sorry, I missed one. So when a call gets hung up, you can do things as well. So your own app can decide to combine all of these different event triggers into some master plan of what to do. So let me just show you what it looks like to route people to their personal banker. I think these got out of order. That's okay. What you're looking at here is just a sample URL of what you should be sending to your web server. So your web server 192.168.0.100, you've got a little CGI there called route. You're passing the CID number, which would be the caller ID number. My little % all caps caller ID number variable is going to get swapped right into that spot, and then it's also going to send the caller ID name. So these are call values that are coming from Switchvox. The user didn't have to do a darn thing, but let's see what we do. So those are going to get swapped out with real information. So there's a phone number and my name are going to get passed to route.cgi. And route.cgi is going to go look that up in the database and say, oh, this is the response that I need to give to Switchvox, and it says transfer extension is 222. Again, these things are pretty much in English. You can tell it's going to transfer this call to extension 222. And I'm going to get to exactly the right person because that's where I'm supposed to go. So we talked about event notifications, and we talked about the URL manager there. Custom switchboard panels. So this is a really cool way to build very demoable, very quick, flashy things for customers that you can sell for quite a bit if you really solve some good problems for them. So what you're going to do is build a little web page, something that you would sort of build for this is a microphone, a mobile device. Anything that fits on this little screen is going to fit really nicely in a switchboard panel because you don't generally have a lot of room there because you want this to be part of an overall switchboard layout. And what happens is you're going to build your panels and then send call values to your application that are then going to probably go look that stuff up and display them on this little web page. So every time a new call comes in, that little panel will refresh and display the new data. So this is how we built the Sugar CRM integration, the Salesforce.com integration, is using the custom panel builder inside Switchvox. And we just took the data from the Salesforce API, plopped it into a little tiny web page. So when a call comes in, we pass in the caller ID into the search of Salesforce, and it returns back this little web page with all the data that you're looking for. So you can very much customize this stuff to fit your customer's needs. CRM is just like a tiny little example of what you might put up there. The cool news is everybody's got an API these days, so you may not have to even write very much code at all. You're just sort of gluing two halves together. But some really interesting stuff can be written when the other side of it is completely controlled by you as well. So you can do some really cool customer database lookup and displays. People use this for trouble tickets all the time. Like if you call in, we can see all of your open cases and things like that, past order history, whatever you want. So this is what the interface looks like to create a custom switchboard panel. It is stupidly easy to do as far as getting the stuff into Switchvox. It just asks you to name it, give it a description, and these two things are just there to help you out. And then there's a URL, just a path to your app, and you give people permissions to see it. So Switchvox is going to pass whatever data is necessary to your app so that it can make these little panels pop up. They might be sensitive information. If you run HR, and what I'm doing every time you call in is querying Monster for your resume, Facebook for your bad pictures last night, Twitter to see what kind of political views you have, and everything else that I might be looking at before I answer the phone, that might not be a panel you want to give to the entire company so that they can see that stuff every time somebody calls into the system. So you can give permission right in here down at the bottom of this screen where you say, you know what, only HR gets to have this panel. So let me give you a little example of what we used this for not too long ago when we were acquired. We didn't know each other very well. If you think about it, there was a core group of us that had been negotiating the acquisition, but there were 14 of us in San Diego, and there were over 100 of us in Huntsville, Alabama. And then we had some remote employees, and suddenly we got bought, and all these people started calling us. And we look at our phones, and there's a caller ID there. And I see that it's Steve Harvey. I don't know who Steve Harvey is. Like, who's this guy calling? I don't know. I mean, you're looking at a development house, a room full of engineers that is fearful of the phone ringing anyway, and none of us wanted to answer him because we didn't know who these guys were. So we built this. So we knew what they looked like and who they were and what department they were in. So that when we answered the phone, we were a lot more comfortable. We knew who we were talking to. Did you guys know that we did this? So all of us had little panels on our desks, and when you'd call, we built this little thing for ourselves. And the way that we did this, it took very little time. There's a company directory on our internal wiki, and we scraped the data, grabbed the pictures, grabbed all the information. We made a little private Flickr directory. They have an API as well. And our app looked at the incoming call, went and asked Flickr, hey, can I have the picture for this person? Went and looked through the rest of the data we grabbed and said, hey, can I have their department and their email address and their title? And we built a little web page that displayed all the stuff. And so every time our phone rang and it was somebody internal, we could see who it was. Just simple, stupid stuff that just really, really helped us out. And this wasn't like a 2-week project. This was like an afternoon, like a cool, it'd be great, this conversation at lunch that happens. And then by the end of the day, we all have this app. And it really, really helps that be a smooth process. So that covers custom switchboard panels. I want to talk a little bit about the future of Extend. I think I have throughout. We are eager to put in what you need. We really, really want people to develop for Switchvox. And so we know that in order to do that, you need to have the tools that you want to build your apps. So it's not uncommon to get to a point in your application development where it's mostly working or it works, but now you want to do this extra little cool thing, and the method doesn't exist to do it. Please let us know in the forums. Can I just ask, what is the URL to Switchvox Developer Central? Does anybody know? Show of hands. No? Do you know? You want a phone. So I have one more. Does that mean you'll all put your hands up? So one other question for you. Let me think of a good one. Do you want me to save one for you?
No, go for it.
What is the name of the call to generate a phone call within Switchvox? Yeah, that one's first.
Switchvox.call or Switchvox.user.call.
Oh, bonus. Very good. You win a phone. You can come get it at the end. Basically, our future of Extend is we want you building apps. And we also want you building apps with Extend and these phones. So please go to the session tomorrow and learn about that API. That's all JavaScript stuff. So even easier and more accessible than even this, I think, kind of. Really, really simple stuff. So let me turn it over to David, who is going to talk about what he's doing. There you are, David Faulk. I didn't know your title, but you think you're funny. Sales engineer, yeah? See, there you have it.
I got power finally.
And network, I hope.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. So as Tristan said, I'm David Faulk, and I'm a sales engineer with Digium. I think I know a lot of the people in the room. I always like to know kind of who my audience is. So if you're a developer, it doesn't matter if you're a Switchvox developer. If you're any kind of developer today, could you raise your hand? Oh, wow. Come on, Steve. We all know. All right, if you are familiar with Switchvox and are also a developer, raise your hand. All right, so the number gets smaller. Okay, so as I said, I'm a sales engineer, and you probably noticed in there I didn't say developer or anything like that. I'm not a developer, so what I do is daily is I help a lot of the partners in this room actually design Switchvox and Asterisk-based systems and kind of go through the requirements there and build networks around our products. I know just enough development stuff to do little applications like this, but I'm by no means an application developer. So what I've put together is something using the IVR Web Integration in Switchvox. And what we've built is a sample banking application, and you'll kind of see what this application does as we go through it. But in a nutshell, what it does is allows the customer to call in. If we recognize them by their phone number, we're automatically going to ask them for their PIN number and then give them the option to either speak to a bank representative or get their account balance. Yeah, that's possible with Switchvox. So let's see if we can get this. All right, so the first place you want to start building something like this is the sound manager in Switchvox. And the sound manager allows you to take all of your different sounds and organize them into folders and things like that. So when I got started here, I didn't want to have to go back and record prompts as I'm building my IVR and all those things. So the first thing I did was I went to the sound manager and created a folder called Astricon for this demo. So what we can do here is switch to our Astricon folder and see that we have 5 files in there. Then I went through and recorded all of my prompts. So you can see we've got the bank greeting prompt in there. We've got one for if they're verified, one if they're not verified, one to enter your PIN number, and one that just says dollars. And I have no idea about why, but the dollars prompt came out really loud. So it's like, it tells you your balance, and then it's like dollars, just for no reason. So it's actually kind of a scary bank. Anyway. So once you've created all your sound prompts, it's now time to actually go build your voice menu for the people to call into, and that's done in the IVR editor. A lot of the people that have been in here for a while that have built IVRs and other systems know it's typically a pretty complex thing to build an IVR. It's one of the hardest things to do with the PBX. Switchvox actually makes it very easy because it's all done through this graphical editor, and you've actually got help every step of the way. So if you don't know what a certain action does, all you have to do is click the help button and we'll tell you what it does. So we start here in this IVR called the Bank Start IVR, and it's extension 100. So what you would do is set your call routing rules to route all your calls directly to this IVR. And we've got a list of actions here, so let's take a look at those. If it would load. Yeah, this internet's great. The first thing it does is it plays a sound, and that sound is obviously the bank greeting. So we say, hi, welcome to the Bank of David Faulk. Please enter your account number, or if we recognize your account number, we're actually going to ask you for your PIN number. Correct. All right, so this action is the send call values to URL action, and as Tristan was just showing you here, here's a real example. So what we're doing is we're calling a script called verify.php on my web server, and what it's sending off is a variable called phone number, and that variable is being set to the value of the Switchvox variable caller ID number. There's a lot of variables that Switchvox has built in to send to web servers. Those are listed here. So say I wanted to send caller ID name to, all I have to do is go down here, click name and hit append, and it'll actually add that onto the URL as well. You can also send any custom variables that you create in the IVR. So we have one called balance or whatever it may be. Any custom variables you can create, you'll get a list here that's separate from system variables, and you can add those on as well. So for instance, you'll see here in a moment that we're going to ask the end user for their PIN number, so we'll tack that on to send off to our web server as well. You'll notice that I've kind of stuck with one variable throughout this, and it's called verified, and my code actually sets that to 1 or 0 depending on whether the information they pass to us matches what's in the database, and we can verify them as an actual customer. So the first thing we're going to do is send off caller ID number. So let me pull up my actual code here. Can you see that on the screen easily, or? It's tiny? All right. Yeah, let's, better?
Getting there. That's good.
All right. see anything up there right now?
Yeah, projector died.
Oh, okay. No worries. Wish I had a guitar or something right now to entertain you guys while we're waiting.
I got a question though.
Go for it.
I'll fill your space while this all
Yeah.
figures this out.
Oh, you're amazing. Thank you.
No problem. Can I do add capsule to Switchvox instead of actually having to type out or not type out, but actually pre-record all my responses?
Yeah, so that's come up before, and Kepstrel, just for the people who don't know in here, is a text-to-speech engine. So you feed it text, and it gives you sound back. What you can do is you can host like an Asterisk server running Kepstrel, and then actually store the sounds that it produces on a web server, and then use the play sound from URL in Switchvox. So you can create these sounds dynamically and have them played out of
But
Switchvox.
you can't put Kepstrel on Switchvox.
Correct. You cannot do that.
Because Switchvox is a closed system that has a set chunk of code that's in there, and anything you want to do external to that has to live on a different machine.
Is there any plans to provide you guys install Central and then we install a license?
There's no plans for Kepstrel now.
Is there any?
We do that for other pieces of software, like the G729 license.
That's what I mean. You provide G729
Yeah.
Max.
There hasn't been, there's no plans to put that in the future.
Any text to speech, because I have a lot of, I do a lot of systems where where we want to say the customer's name or other things, to personalize the responses.
Well, so typically text-to-speech is pretty CPU intensive, so it's actually kind of a benefit to have that running on a separate server in case something goes wrong with it. Your main PBX stays alive, so.
Why we don't put Kepstrel on Switchvox.
Yeah, it's pretty CPU intense to do that. Do we need to do anything else here? Or?
I think it died.
It's 3 to 5 minutes to cool off the bulb before it'll go back on. So we gotta wait.
All right, so who's got more questions?
Do I have more funds? No, I don't. I just have two. But there's contests going on. I don't know where the one today might be over, but I know that inside the booth, inside the Digium booth, we are giving away phones. So just ask any of our booth staff about how to get into the drawing and win the contest and all that stuff. There's quite a few phones, so don't be put off by the drawing. Other questions? Yeah.
I'll ask a question since I broke the projector.
Yeah, guy that broke the projector.
But you guys told me to.
That's what I heard.
Well, after I turned it off.
Did you try unplugging it 3 times?
He deserves a phone for that.
Yeah. No, do you have a question?
Yeah. Is Extend available on everything down to Switchvox Home?
No.
Where does it?
No.
Everybody does that, right? Because they've been trained to do that, but that's our entry point, right?
Yeah, I
So if you want us
understand.
to use your system, let's not
I understand.
tell everybody how bad it sucks. Let's encourage
Well,
people
he's not
to use
mine.
it.
I'm just a guy.
Well, but we got that from someone in a Digium shirt. And I understand you want to sell it, but you also want us to use it, right? Learn it, get into it, so.
Yeah, I mean, the way that, just for those of you that aren't familiar, we do have a Switchvox Home Edition, Switchvox Soho, and Switchvox SP. So there are 3 different levels. And the way that those are differentiated is they're not limited so much in the number of users, although we make recommendations in that way, but we feature differentiate them. And the API is a really darn powerful feature that usually pretty advanced businesses use, and that adds a ton of value. So to give away something with such value is maybe an opportunity for you to instead sell them, something that they can really
So
get
as
a
a
lot out
developer,
of.
if I want to play with it and learn it in order to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
able to sell it, how do I?
So the way
buy
that
it?
you do that, no. In fact, we recognize that you might not want to buy that to see how it is to develop with it. So we do have demo systems available that are basically hosted by us. So you would be accessing this stuff remotely, but as you can see, we access it all remotely anyway.
I'm actually using one of those demo systems right now.
I mean, I don't ever know if I'm working on a box that's under my desk or down the hall or in some data center in Alabama. So
You live in North America, you live in South Africa on the other end of the world.
it is true. here somewhere bandwidth limited, or with other infrastructure problems. But in that case, yeah, maybe buy Switchvox. We do everything we can to make it so you don't necessarily have to buy Switchvox to be able to learn the API, build proof of concepts for customers. That's a great way to do that and to access that.
All right, let's keep going. Just real quick, does anyone know if there's anything in this room at 3? Do we have to be on right at 3? Yeah, all right, let's go through it. All right. So what we have here is we were just talking about how we're sending this caller ID number variable off to our web server. So this is PHP, and I'm sure a lot of you in here are familiar with PHP. The first thing we do here is we get that variable from the URL provided by Switchvox. So this is actually initializing a variable called customer equal to the phone number variable we grab out of the URL. Then, for security purposes, we're resetting the variable verified to 0 on every call. So every time the script is called, we're unverifying whoever it is. Now we're just doing some basic MySQL connections. So we're using a MySQL backend database, connecting to the database named Astracon, and then we're running this really simple query right here with a line that begins with SQL. So that query is saying select anything from the banking table where the phone number is equal to customer, which is the phone number we grabbed from Switchvox. If we didn't get anything back, that means something's going wrong and we'll error out. And let me scroll past my comments. Code I was working on this morning. All right, so if we did get a result back, we want to count how many times we got results back. It should be 1. We should only have one customer with that phone number in our database. So we're setting this variable here, number of rows, equal to MySQL number of rows of the result. Without going too deep into it, the next thing we've got is an if statement that says if number of rows is not equal to 0, which means if we got a result back from the database, we want to set the variable verified to 1, which means, okay, that person's verified. They're a real customer of ours. Else, if we got 0 results back, we're going to set verified equal to 0. And let me go back to Switchvox. So you can see here, this is where we want that variable passed back from my script via XML. And let me go back to another part of the IVR now. All right, so I've put this wait in here kind of artificially. So once we do step 2, which is send call values to URL, then we do a wait. And the wait's kind of just made up to make it seem more real because it happens so fast, it would almost seem fake if you were up here playing with the demo and there wasn't a wait and there would be instant. So we've got the wait in there, tell it wait 2 seconds. Then after that, the 4th step is a conditional clause. And it says if verified equals 0, we're going to send them to an IVR that asks them for their phone number, their account number, and all that kind of stuff. If verified equals 1, we're going to send them to another IVR that allows them to listen to their account balances, to hear their account balances, or talk to a representative. So we'll go to that IVR now. All right, so what we've got here is one action, basically, and it's playing a sound, and it's saying, your account has been verified by your phone number, blah, blah, blah. And the important thing here is we've got 2 options. When the 1 key is pressed, we're going to go to a different menu called Actions. And when the 2 key is pressed, we're going to go to the same menu. And I'll show you what this menu does. So it's a little less confusing once we get there. All right. So based on whether they press 1 or 2, we're going to send them to different parts of this menu. If they press 2 to speak to a representative, we're going to send them here to the dial extension action, which is the representative. If they press 1, we're going to ask them for their PIN number, record that to a variable, and then send that off to another PHP script that then verifies them based on their PIN number, and will actually play their account balance back to them. So now we're sending off multiple variables. We're actually sending off 3 to the separate script. We're sending off their phone number, the verified option, because before we play any account balances, we want to know if this person is real or if they somehow got to this IVR by dialing it directly or whatever it may be. We want to have some kind of security in here. And then we're also sending off the PIN number, which is sent by the customer pressing DTMF digits on their phone. So variable names that could be passed back from this script, the only thing we're going to have here is balance. So if we take a look at this, there's a huge delay, and I apologize for that. There we go. So now you can see we're getting multiple variables here. We're getting phone number, we're getting the verified variable, which is actually set from the database in the very first script. So we carry that across multiple IVRs and multiple databases. And it's almost the same script, except for this time, we're selecting from the banking table where the customer's PIN number matches what they input. And if we get a result back, we're actually going to send this XML down here that starts with echo. And if you notice, in the middle of all that, there's a .row balance. It's basically saying, take the balance from the row returned from MySQL, their account balance, and that's going to be sent to Switchvox as a number. Now, that's still not useful because it's just random XML being sent to Switchvox. So how do we turn that into something that's useful for the customer? So once we return the balance back, we've got another IVR action that we're going to call that will actually take that balance and say something that makes sense to people. It's not XML. So we're going to say, we've got an action called say a number, and that's going to, we've got say digits and say number, and the difference here is say digits would say 1, 2, 3, and say a number would say 123. So we chose to use say a number here, so all of our account balances sound like real actual numbers. And of course, everyone in my bank has tons of money in their bank account. It's all 6, 7 digits. It's great. So once we say their account balance, we do one more thing, which is we play a sound that says dollars. And again, that's the really stern dollars that I came up with the other day. So that's really all it took to build this. And I want to actually try to do it here live. If the internet holds up, it'll sound good and work really well. If the internet doesn't work very well, it'll sound like bad VoIP, and I'm sure we've all heard that before. So, all right, so I've got a soft phone here, and what I'm going to do is call into this IVR. The soft phone is going to kind of fake itself with a number that's recognized by the bank database. So if we call in here, come on. Yeah, it's not going to work. Okay, so give me 1 second. Let me turn off the Wi-Fi. That sounds awful. And try just the wired connection. Do a quick text, Google. All right, got a connection. So let's try that again. Welcome to the Bank of David Faulk. We will attempt to verify your account by your phone number. Oh, yeah. Congratulations. We've been able to verify your identity by your phone number. Press 1 for account balances, or 2 to speak to a bank representative. So we'll press 1 now. Please enter your PIN number.
123,456
dollars. So there you go. So, all right. Glad that worked. All right. So that's really going to wrap it up. It took me, honestly, it could say cents. Well, so here's my database, and I just kind of, yeah, if you got $123,000.
So is there a mechanism so that, let's say, the back-end web service has a delay or it fails, does it automatically say times out after a certain?
Yeah, Switchvox won't allow an external service to stop call processing. So
I think the default's 5 seconds.
yeah, it's after 5 seconds we're going to do whatever the next IVR action is, and in this case it would actually not verify you because we didn't get anything back from the database. So
I got a follow-up question from that. Is that does
1 second.
I just have a follow-up question. Is that why was XML chosen versus like JSON or something that is less? Oh, JSON's available as well.
But in the
Not for the IVR.
yeah, you can send JSON requests for other API stuff, But for IVR request, you have to send variable names back with XML. And we give you the schema and everything in the help file. I mean, all I did was copy and paste it into my data definition.